Welcome you and all to another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast, where we talk about Latino everything. Thank you very much for being here. If you have not subscribed to the channel, this is the time. Support the channel, help us grow more, get this amazing, beautiful stories out to the public of this amazing Latinos doing amazing work in their field and throughout the entire world. For real, we are all over the place. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Today we have an amazing individual. Actually, we know a little bit about him before from a previous episode. He might not know about it, but we talked about him. He is a tattoo artist for more than 20 years plus. He's been tattooing, traveling the world, tattooing, has many awards. He is the other half owner of Ink and Beauty Tattoo, located in Fort Worth, Texas. We have Tip Martinez en la casa. How you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, man. How are you?
Directito desde El Salvador.
That's right, baby.
Awesome. Absolutely. Do you speak a little bit Spanish?
Claro, lo hablo, lo traduzco, lo leo, lo escribo.
De todo.
De
okay,
todo.
Está bien. So we do a little Spanglish, so good. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I know you come all the way from Fort Worth. Around this time, traffic is wild, but thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and talk first, but we're going to do Preguntas al Chile. Preguntas al Chile.
Let's do it.
I know you've seen the segment. I know you. Shout out to Drea, the spouse, the wifey. She's the one that told me about you, and then when I saw your work, I'm like, ooh.
Appreciate that, man.
He's somebody that we have to talk to.
Appreciate that.
All right, here we go. Preguntas al Chile.
Let's do it.
Tacos o tortas?
I'm going to go with tacos.
Tacos. Corn tortilla, flour tortilla.
You know what? It depends on the day. Like if it's early in the morning, I'm going to go with corn. But if it's at night, I'll go with some flour tortillas.
Awesome.
You know?
Gorditas or pupusas?
Pupusas all day, you know, by default.
What kind, though? Of where's your go-to?
My to-go usually is going to be like a bean and cheese, or usually it's going to be like a revuelta or an old cheese. I don't discriminate. You know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to the pupusas.
Absolutely. Do you like, of course, you have to have the curtido in it too, but do you like the spicy of the sauce that you have? Do you like to mix it up with maybe a spicier sauce, like a Mexicana sauce?
You know what's so funny is that my wife and I, we always talk about this because I didn't grow up eating hot food. You know, like Salvadorians, we don't really have like chile in our food. Like,
right.
I mean, we kind of do, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember my grandmother, she would put a little bit of chiles, but like, there's no like local jalapenos in the region or anything like that, you know? So like, I'd never, you know, I grew up eating like plátanos fritos, you know, the sweet plantains, you know? So, you know, I put a little bit of hot on anything, and I'm like, whoo, what is this? And you look at the can, and this is mild on it.
So you prefer the regular sauce?
The regular sauce is good, you know.
It's so good. Okay. Plátanos con crema y frijoles or tamales de pollo?
Plátanos con crema y frijoles.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah.
That was like the staple every day at my house.
Every day? That's dope. I had some before. A friend of mine, we used to go to a Salvadorian place a few times in Irvin. And we used to go in, that's when I got introduced to all the good stuff.
There's a lot of Salvadorians in Irvin. Like, I did not know that. Because in Fort Worth, like, when I was growing up, I think the only other Salvadorians that I knew was my cousins.
Really? Really?
And they were girls.
When did you find out there was quite a bit of Salvadorians in Irvin? Who told you, or how did you
You know what's
find
crazy?
the community?
It was recently, not even that recently, but kind of. I closed down I was at a studio, my lease was up. So I closed that down, and I was looking to relocate, and I was actually waiting for a spot to open up where I'm at now. Like that's where I have my eyes on.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I was taking my appointments at Rose Gold Tattoo over on Irvin. Shout out to them. Okay, my boy Edgar and Patty, they're the best. So I went over there and worked over there. And being over there, you know, like, oh, you're Salvadorian, you know, there's a lot of Salvadorians over here. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, there's a little Salvadorian restaurant up the street. So I kind of got on Google, and I go, that is crazy. There's a lot of pupuserias out here, you know? and then I met a couple of clients that were Salvadorian, and that's kind of how I figured out that there was like a little hub of them over there.
That's awesome. But
yeah, so I do got a couple of spots that I go to over there. That's pretty good.
Doesn't it feel good to run into your community when you're out and about? Like again, you're thinking that you're, you know, the only ones you know is your cousin, but here even in the DFW is like a whole freaking community of
facts. You know, it's growing up, I didn't have a lot of that. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of like other people around me that were my culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, anytime I meet somebody anywhere that I'm in the world, they're like, and I'm sure you feel the same way, anywhere you go, you meet somebody, you're like, hey, what's up, baby? But even if they're not, even if they're like, Mexican or Peruanos or wherever they're from, anywhere that I run into them, it's always love. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like though the flags might be different, like la cultura is like the same. You know what I'm saying? Like to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we a lot of Latinos, have a very similar upbringing, very similar things that we do. But you're right, real close to it. Some of the things are different, but culture-wise, it's like a good 80%, almost the same.
Facts.
Right? Okay. Salsa verde, salsa roja, if you was to have, you rather not?
I get the verde one for sure.
The verde one?
Yeah,
awesome.
With tacos, I got to put a little bit in there for sure.
Yeah. Menudo, pozole?
None.
None?
None.
Cool. Is it the texture? Is anything your wife never actually introduced you to, or is it just not your thing?
You know what? Kind of like any soups are not really my thing. Like,
soups are not your thing?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, in my grandma's house, it would be hot every day, and every day would come from school, and it was like a pot of soup. I was like, no. So as I got older, soup was like something that I only maybe when I'm sick or something like that. But other than that,
so it was a little bit of trauma.
A little bit of trauma in there from childhood.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Nobody wants to eat sopa. It's like a staple whenever it's cold.
Whenever it's cold,
when it warms your body and all that stuff. But not when it's hot. Too hot.
No, it is too hot.
Okay. Valentina or Tapatio or Cholula hot sauce, any of those?
All three of them, I guess.
Yeah,
so with chips for sure, and a little bit of limon in there for sure.
Okay. Tell me, so pretty much people in general know pupusas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the plátanos con crema and frijoles. But do you think there's an underrated dish that people don't talk about it much? There's a Salvadorian dish that people need to know or introduce themselves to?
What's crazy? I guess the other. I mean, it is pretty well known. I guess if you're in the culture, but if you're not, we do like these sandwiches, like panes con pollo, and then so it's like a sub sandwich. But the chicken comes with like its own little caldo or a little juice, and they put like lettuce, tomatoes, rábanos in there, and then just like kind of drench it over the top with the juice. And like,
really,
yeah, that's also a staple, but not very well known. You also have another thing called is arrigua. Riwas are like made out of corn, and they have cheese in them. So think of it like a really flat cornbread that has cheese in it
on top.
No, like in it.
Inside?
So and mixed with the corn masa.
Really?
So when you tear it, like it's cheesy. You know what I'm saying?
And it feels like bread almost.
It feels like bread almost. It feels
really.
Bread. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay, I'll make sure I check that out. Some of those dishes that what I like yuca.
Yuca's good. Yuca's good.
Yeah,
sure.
I really like yuca a lot from y'all. It's just good to me. Just dip it on different.
It's like a little extra type of fry. You know what I'm saying? Like a little crunchy.
Different type of. It's literally like a fry, but it's got a different consistency, different flavor. I like it more than the fry, so it's pretty cool. Okay, what is a somebody told me, little birdie told me you kind of like conspiracy theories a little bit. So give me your top 3 conspiracy theories that when you heard, you're like, man, no way that's not true. Or has to be true.
You know what's so crazy is that I got down the conspiracy rabbit hole like around 20 years ago, like maybe my second year into tattooing.
Really?
Tattoo artists are very, like eccentric people. You meet like artists, everybody. So I got to this shop, and at that shop was kind of like I had already heard about a couple of things before, but then I started to hear about like secret societies around the world and stuff like this, and like the deep government, like how like our government's just like the poster child, but then somebody else runs behind that.
Yeah.
And those were like, what? Those were like the beginning of like, nah, man, like being really plugged into the matrix.
Right.
But I will say a lot of the conspiracies that I looked up ended up being true, and then like, so nowadays, I could go on and on about them.
Okay. Let me get 3 of the ones that, as you were knowing about it later on, a few years later, they came to be true. What would those be?
Okay, the Kennedy assassination. Like, if you want to go watch, I mean, there's a ton of stuff about it, but like a really good one is JFK revives through the looking glass, and that one's very informative due to the fact that a lot of those files you couldn't actually. They were like closed files until a certain amount of time.
Right.
So then everybody, when you go watch that, first they tell you that he was shot from the back, because if you know where that happened at, that street goes down into it, and allegedly he was on that building shooting down. So I would highly recommend you to go watch that interview, and then you will see how doctored all that was and how they covered up a lot of information. And I get it, you know what I mean? Like sometimes, people think that these people in power are like all knowing and like all powerful, but they're just regular people like you and I trying to make it happen. So when like these type of things happen, I'm pretty sure like they have like crisis teams that come and try to make, soften it for the people and stuff. That's one of them. The moon landing, it's another one. And I have my theories about that, whether we'd landed on the moon or not. But I do believe that the footage that the American people got, or the world got, I think that was shot somewhere here on Earth,
Okay.
Interesting story.
And then what's the third one?
A third one, or you know what, a third one that I really like, I can't tell you that it's true or not. I just really love this story. If you guys ever looked into it, is the Bob Lazar story. So Bob Lazar is a man that came out way in the 80s, and he's kind of the reason why we know of Area 51. So he is the first one to speak on it. He goes on and speaks with George Knapp. George Knapp is an investigative reporter out of Las Vegas. And he goes on there. George Knapp was actually supposed to interview John Lear. John Lear canceled and said, hey, you should talk to this guy, Lazar. So Lazar claims that he was working in a facility called S4 inside of Area 51 that reverse engineered a crashed UFO. And I highly recommend that you watch that as well, and then you can make up your mind whether you believe that or not.
You hear those conspiracy theories about secret societies, but you always think here in the U.S., but around the world.
Of course.
There could be other ones that we don't know.
Of course.
And the deep state thing is interesting because even though the government's in place, I don't know, I get a sense there's always somebody else.
In the shadows or
not in the shadows,
the
but literally dictating what needed to be done, Those people, it's a great, there's a experiment that they did. And it's not exactly, I'm not going to set exactly to you, I can't remember, right? But it's more of a person of authority they put in place to be able to look like somebody's in charge. And as people, we were willing to follow that particular person, such as a president, right? You put a president in front of the masses, and he's an authority person, they're going to lead. But that's just like a
the face
mirror.
Of the company.
The face of the company, the CEO, but not everything else that goes on.
Correct.
And I think there's a little bit something to that. We don't know, of course, because everything else, the media, everything that we get media-based, somebody dictated that needed to be put in front of us.
Yeah, in the documentary with JFK, there's an assassination attempt that happens to the president of France, and he has you have to watch it because I don't want to speak on it, but it implicates the U.S. And so he gets on the phone to tell him that the U.S. had nothing to do with it. And in that conversation, he tells him that he doesn't have full control of his government. Like basically saying the president is almost like the face of the corporation, and then the board members are who actually make the decisions. But when you think about government and stuff like that, we just don't get to see it. And it is true. Earlier you said how here in the U.S. you have a certain elite group of people, right? And around the world you have other ones, and you do you have the Jesuits, you have the Rosicrucians, you have the Society of Vril in Germany. So there's a ton of groups that are all influential, if you want to say it like that. They're not necessarily in power, but they're influential.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're the ones that dictate a lot of the things that goes on in the agenda for the masses.
They do.
They didn't want them to implement. So that's pretty cool. I like it. I like conspiracy theories because I think somewhere somebody says something to somebody and it trickled down and it got kind of diluted a little bit, but something was there. They initiated the conversation of something being kind of funny, maybe a conspiracy, until years later, all of a sudden, it becomes to be a real deal.
A real deal. Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. So I recently went to Vegas, right? And the Sphere that's in Vegas, right? The big ball. Okay, I went in there because you said earlier about the Matrix. So I go in there, I watch the show. They have, you can walk around and check it out. You go, and it's like you sit down in the theater, you watch the show that they're going to present a presentation. It's like a movie. So when you're there, the whole freaking thing lights up and it's all images and everything. But the trippy thing about, I know you heard before the conspiracy that we're in the Matrix or this is not real and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, check this out. So as I'm there, I'm getting those thoughts because as they're portraying it, like they putting an image in front of us, that depending on what the scene is, the smell, you can smell that.
So if it was like lavender in the screen,
Yes,
that's what you were
you can
smelling at.
smell
Wow,
it.
smart.
The temperature changes as you're there.
Desert,
The
cold.
movement.
Wow.
Like if an elephant, one of the scene was an elephant, and you can move. And I was like, bro, if there was ever like a machine or program that can do that for you, the Matrix is like a real deal.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Bro, it was amazing to be there and feel that. I'm like, wow.
Because you're fully immersed.
Everything.
You're fully immersed.
You feel like you're in a freaking spaceship traveling through
time,
through
space.
Time, through space, through different places on Earth. It was crazy. I highly recommend y'all check out Sphere.
That's awesome.
Free plug in Vegas. Y'all owe me next time I go. Okay. So when you think of the word Latino or when you hear the word Latino, what is the first thing that comes to mind to you?
To me, to be completely honest, a lot of pride. A lot of pride because I feel like all Latinos, no matter where you come from, we're very resilient people and real trabajadores, you know what I'm saying? And you know, obviously you have your bad apples in every basket, right? No matter what, you know, but I think it's a lot of pride, like, you know, when you think about, and the reason why I say a lot of pride is because, to be completely honest, this is my theory, right? If you're brown, if you're a descendant of any indigenous type of group throughout all the Americas, Mesoamerica, whatever, if you're a descendant of that and you're still alive in this time, like, you should be proud because you survived colonialism, you survived the smallpox epidemic that killed almost 90% of the indigenous people. That's a theory as well. But so if you're brown, if you have, like, you know, indigenous features, like, you should be real proud, bro. I actually have a tattoo of Kukulkan tattooed on my shoulder, and the dude looks like me. He got long hair and it's got a long nose, and, you know, he looks like he's from Mesoamerica. And so I'm proud. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so and everywhere I go, I look at it like I'm a representative of my race. You know, like, you know, something
amazing the way that you just described, to think that your ancestors outlive all those things that were against it, and you're here still kind of looking like them, and you're here representing who they are. That's crazy. I never heard of it. Did you get that tattoo prior to the movie Black Panther, Kukulkan, or that was way before?
I actually like ancient history is kind of one of my hobbies. So I study a lot of, like, you know, from the Olmecs to the Aztecs to the Lenca people to the Incas and all over the world, like, you know, like Egyptians, you know, like
the Anunnakis, and all the other ones.
Correct. Like you know, like Mesopotamian and all of that. Like, I'm really heavy on that. So
yeah.
So but the reason why I got Kukulkan is because he's like the bearer of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So, and I have my theories about that, as a matter of fact. You know, because
please share. Don't stop us from you sharing.
So, you know, you just mentioned the Anunnaki, right?
Yes.
So for the people that don't know, the Anunnakis are mentioned in stone tablets that were found here on Earth, in the area of, like, Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq, if you were to think about it like that. And these tablets have, like, you know, a lot of the stories that you've read in the Bible. So, like, you know, like, for example, like the story of Noah. That story, there's a very similar story to that story of Noah in those tablets, and I believe it's mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the oldest writings.
Many religions write and recorded that there was a great flood that happened at one time.
Correct.
Even including the Mayas and the Aztecs.
In the Mayas and the Aztecs, of course. So in those Mesopotamian tablets, it said that these Anunnaki leave the planet, or in one of those interpretations, shall I say, because I don't want to, like, stumble over my words, or people say, like, that's not what happened. So in one of those interpretations, they leave the planet and a certain being gets sent back to reestablish civilization on Earth. And in the tablet, he says that he comes over the ancient city of Kem, which is Egypt now, right? And then he comes down, he opens when he walks out of his ship, that the survivors are like barbarians and greet him with spears. So jump over to Mexico, Kukulkan, this feather serpent, right? And this feather serpent comes down, opened his mouth, and then a man came out of it. That's exactly the tattoo that I have on me. So my theory is that potentially in an ancient past, some human beings were highly advanced and technological and some weren't. And sometimes you say, well, how could that happen? Well, right now we live in the United States. I'm speaking into this microphone and my voice is being recorded. But in the Amazon, you still have people that are hunter and gatherers.
Absolutely.
You understand me? So if a great cataclysm were to happen, who do you think would survive?
They are.
Exactly.
We'll go back. We'll know the concept of a phone.
Correct.
We'll know the concept of a car. But are we able to make one? I'm not able to create a phone.
Absolutely.
I'm not able to create towers to talk to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
I might know about it, but I don't know the how to create a phone.
Correct. As long as that
make a car.
As soon as it runs out of battery, it's done. You know. So I from what I've read, I think that there's a possibility that there were some human beings that were able to survive this cataclysm and came and restarted civilization. And when they say that this feather serpent came down, that it was like purple feathers out of his neck, that it landed and his mouth opened up and a man walked out. So me thinking in today's terms, if I were to hear that story, I would say that some type of vehicle came down. And what maybe they interpreted as feathers, it was the jets slowing that craft down. And it wasn't his mouth that opened up, but it was the cargo door that opened up and a man walked out of it.
Okay, check this out. So I did I don't know if you know what a temazcal is. It's a sweat lodge, pretty much. And it's just something that you participate if you're a native, and it's like a cleansing thing.
That's awesome.
But after that, we had a small conversation with some of the gentlemen that were there, and I always wonder, always curious about. I know everything else that we know about, religion and things like that, which is great, right? I think it brings a lot of peace for some people that really practice and helps them grow.
Correct.
But I always wonder about different things. And we were just in conversation. He heard from the natives and some of the older folks, the individuals that have been there for a while, the elders, that there's a story, and this is all through stories. We don't know if it's real or not, that there was
oral tradition.
There was galaxies a long time ago, 7 of them, and then all those came and descended upon Earth in different types and different places. And there's a lot of the elders and a lot of different, you can find it on different tribes that they talk about the people from the sky, the people from the stars.
Correct.
Who are those people? What did they do? What influence was it here when they got here? And what exactly how did they shape us? It's weird that as people throughout history, we're hunter-gatherers, and then all of a sudden there's a particular time and place where all of a sudden we know how to build cities.
Correct.
We know how to harvest. We know how to grow crops and everything else. And we shoot forward like thousands of years or millions of years ahead of where we were.
Correct. So yeah, you're crazy about that because the modern human being has been around for about 250,000, pushing it to 300,000 years.
Yep.
And then it's only been in the past 6,000 years that we've gone from like hunter-gatherers and putting people on the moon or even sending probes out into space. So that is a humongous leap, in evolution. And so I do subscribe to the idea of being helped. If you think about it in the religious text, God gives the Israelites the Ark of the Covenant, okay? And the Ark of the Covenant, they walk around the city of Jericho one time, or I believe they walk around the city of Jericho one time a day for 7 days and 7 times on the 7th day. And that when they opened up the Ark of the Covenant, that the trumpets of God came out, and the sound of it broke the walls down. So there's a man named Michael Tellinger. I believe he's out of South Africa. And he was studying this certain structures out in Africa. And through his studies, he believes that the way that a lot of these pyramids were put together was through sound.
Yeah.
And so he made an experiment where he puts 2 speakers together and blasts it with a frequency. The smaller the object is, the more that the human ear would hear it. But the heavier the object is, that you wouldn't hear it. So it would be almost indistinguishable to magic, to the lamest terms, And going back to what I told you about Kukulkan coming down, opening up, and helping the natives, and the reason why I kind of like inclined towards that theory is because I believe it's during World War II that the U.S. used this islands out in the South Pacific where there were like some uncontacted tribes there. And but they needed these islands to refuel planes and send them out to Japan. So they actually said, man, just go over there, man, give them medicine, give them some food, and so years later, somebody went back over there to see what happened to these natives. And they have built shrines now. out of hay of like antennas like this, and they were praying to them, hoping that the gods of the sky would come back. Some of these guys had even tattooed like U.S. Army on their chest. So it just goes to show you when a lower civilization...
What?
Yeah.
That's freaking wild.
Yeah. So when a lower civilization meets a higher civilization, technologically wise, even if they're in the same plane, a lot of the times they will deify them, because they can't comprehend, it's like you travel back in time 1,000 years and I gave you a lighter so you can start fire, and somebody saw you use that lighter 1,000 years ago, they'll go, this guy's a sorcerer. You know what I'm saying? So I do think that throughout time, either outer world helped, has intervened, or people kept ancient knowledge and eventually slowly passed it down. And I think that maybe that's very possible, and the reason why we all of a sudden exploded but haven't really reached a crazy point in technology is because whoever does have this knowledge kind of baby feeds it.
Yeah, because we're still at generation 1 in the generation spectrum. We haven't even gone to another or colonized another planet. Be elevated even more. We're I think that we're not even a one.
Zero.
Yeah,
I think
we're
zero.
You're right. We're not even. We're getting close to, because we were talking about going to, but we haven't colonized, so we're still a zero.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can talk to you about all these stuff all day, but let's get to your story. So, were you born in El Salvador?
I was.
Okay. What part of El Salvador is your family and you're from?
I am from Santa Tecla, which is right next to the capital. So if you were to think about Dallas Fort Worth, San Salvador is the capital, and Santa Tecla is right next to it. Awesome. So I grew up in Santa Tecla, specifically a place called La Colonia Las Delicias. Shout out to everybody over there. Shout out to my family. You already know. And I was born in 86. So 86 was the middle of the Civil War. So the Civil War was still going on.
Wow.
And the day that I was born, there was a 7.2 earthquake. So my mother was actually in her bed, and earthquake shook everything. And so the nurse came and got her out. She said that she was coming down the stairs, and by the time she got out of the hospital, they already had the babies out there. And they were just calling your name, giving you a bottle and saying get home. So she just had me while everything's in ruins.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And then some lady that knew her saw her. And she was like, what are you doing? I just had my baby. She said, get in the car, I'll take you home. So she took her home. So my dad and my uncle went to the hospital thinking that she was under all that rubble.
Wow.
And then got back home to find me and my mom already home.
That's wild.
So yeah, it's crazy. My whole life as a little kid, I remember the day you were born. I was taking a shower and everything shook, And El Salvador lays like Mexico, it's in the San Andreas fault line.
Mm-hmm.
So every 10 to 15 to 20 years, there's a massive earthquake that kind of comes around. But that earthquake was very significant at the time. And there was a ceasefire. I believe that there was around 2,000 to 3,000 people that died, around 250,000 people that lost their homes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, man. So I often feel very privileged to be here today.
Right. You got the native in you that you survive all that and earthquake. It's happening too, bro.
You know what's crazy is that usually I don't like to talk about my life because it's been so eventful that some people that haven't been through anything like that or have never heard of anything like that, think it's fake. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times, I have very much chosen not to speak about it or downplay it or stuff like that, but
I appreciate you opening up. Thank you so much. I think it's super dope. I mean, I know people in '85 earthquake in Mexico that happened. It was
correct,
crazy. That survived and they were good, and people were pregnant at the time, at the same time, pretty much giving birth at the same time everything was happening.
Mm-hmm.
People were babies and survived the earthquake. So it's a real deal.
It's a real deal.
It's a real deal that happened in all over the place,
Yeah.
So I wouldn't doubt you at all whatsoever. Okay. And then when is it that your family decides to make it to the U.S.? Do they go anywhere else?
Sure.
Is it a reason why? Is the war still happening?
The war was still happening.
Uh-huh.
My father was in the military here in the States. So that's kind of how we got to come over here. He left when I was about 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was around 5, I came to see him in Houston, went back to El Salvador. And when I was around 8 years old, I think I went to go see him for Father's Day type of surprise.
Right.
And I ended up just staying with him.
Really?
I ended up not going back to El Salvador.
Oh, wow.
And going to school in the U.S.,
So he was the military in the U.S.?
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct.
Thank you for your service. Appreciate
for sure.
it.
Shout out to my pops.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, so you decide to stay. I'm pretty sure he has to go through the process of making you legal license. Does your mom join y'all later, or?
I stayed with my father from age 8 till about 14. My mother decides to move. I had an uncle that moved to Texas, like I think like maybe 87,
Right.
no, maybe like 89 or something like that, and set roots up here for from that time. So my mother, when I was about 14 years old, she came here, and I came to visit her. I surprised her the same way that she surprised my father. So she was actually eating at medieval times, and my uncle was like, "I'm gonna go into the restroom," and went and got me at Love Field, drove me back. So when I came down the stairs, I tapped my mother on the shoulder, and I was like, "Hey, Mom," and she was like, "Hey," and I hadn't seen her like in many years at that time, So give me a hug. When we have dinner, we go back and I check out, and so she's I go to her apartment, and she has this 1-bedroom apartment, little twin size mattress. I was like, this is where you're living. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, I got a job. I got a car. I'm in school. Like, I'm learning a bit of English. Like, we're good. And I was like, man, Mom, but you're like alone and you're in the hood. And she just didn't really understand that at that time, So I went back to California with my pops. That's where I was staying at the time. That's where I moved to when I left El Salvador. And I was basically like, hey, man, I got to go. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I can't, My father did really well for his life. So like at that time, we're really, it's me and my 2 youngest brothers, my stepmother, would live in a beautiful home. I got a pool in the back, a jacuzzi, basketball court. Like, he's doing well. And I was like, I just can't be here thinking that my mom's sleeping like that, So we went kind of back and forth for a little bit, like for like a week or 2. And it was I think it was already summertime. Or it was about to be summertime. I was already training to play football. It was 9th grade. It was like
so
summer.
You were still in high school?
I was in high school, yeah.
Wow.
So I was like in summer camp for football in California, when I just, every day I was just thinking that she's alone. My mother's a beautiful woman, so I just told him, like, yo, either you take me to the airport or my boys are going to like drive me over there. So then like we had this talk. He gave me this prodigal son verses from the Bible, and then I left. And I moved to Fort Worth. Shout out to the west side of Fort Worth, as a matter of fact, Las Vegas Trail, Lake Como, Texas.
Yeah.
And I moved to the west side of Fort Worth. So that's where my mom was at. Here recently, I did some motivational speaking at a middle school in the north side of Fort Worth, Elder Middle School. And I was super nervous.
Really?
Super nervous. And so years ago, I made a post on Facebook, and I tagged my friends from high school at that time. And so I started that motivational speaking with that. And I was like, hey, man, obviously you see me today, maybe you have misconceptions that I'm here to like tell you this or that or the other. Like, I'm not here to sell you no story or anything. I'm just here to like tell you who I am. So I read this thing, and it kind of goes, wow, I just got off the phone with a friend on the other side of the world. It's crazy to think this started at a 1-bedroom apartment where my mother slept at a twin-size bed that we bought at a yard sale up the street, and I slept on the living room floor. I said we didn't have much days. We didn't have much during those days, to say the least. But in that very same apartment, me and my friends came up with our very first tattoo machine. And I just said, I just want to give a big thank you to the Lozano family for always opening their door and sharing a good meal to me. And I tagged everybody, my boy Sergio Hernandez, which is a very big reason to why I tattoo. I'll get into that later. And I just wanted to paint the picture for them, like this is where I was at. So I went from a very privileged type of lifestyle, living with my father, to coming and living in Fort Worth, living with my mom, and like her not having much, but we had each other. So like that's what mattered to me. So I was sleeping on the floor. And I remember one time my friend came in my apartment. I was like, yo, I got to get the basketball. And he's like, I got to use the restroom. Can I go in there? I'm like, yeah.
Thank you so much for checking out this full episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Make sure you go and subscribe. Leave us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment that you were here today. Thank you very much. Till next time.
And he goes in and like goes into the restroom, comes out and like opens the door. And he's like, oh, it's your mom's room. And then he opens the closet room, and he's like, oh, this is the closet. And he opens the other closet. And he's like, yo, where's your room? And then he noticed my pile on the floor, and he's like, Tip, you're sleeping on the floor, bro. And I was like, it's all good, bro. It's temporary. Like this, It's like, I had a bed before. I know what it is. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And to put it into perspective, like I was sleeping on the floor, but I had a friend upstairs that was sleeping in the same floor plan as me, but he had 5 siblings in there. So then, who had it worse?
Yeah.
So even though,
How do you, even though it's your boys, you always going to be cool with them. You know, they kind of sort of know you a little bit more, not feel shame or anything like that. Instead of like, it's all good, bro. It's temporary. Don't worry about it. How does that come? Where does that
Where
come
does that
from?
come from? You know, I think it comes from growing up in El Salvador and
Right.
seeing real poverty
Mm-hmm.
and 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 seeing little boys like carry, you know, leña up the mountain, or kids and their dads picking through trash. So I, I felt like I had a roof over my head. There was AC in that apartment. I had hot shower in that shower. Like
You was living a good
I
life.
was, I know what it is to be really, really, really poor.
Yeah.
So you know, so I always felt like, and then it was true. You know, my mother was also the type of woman that real trabajadora. You know, a smart woman. So like I knew that this was because I've lived with her before and we had it good.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what I'm saying. So I know she likes nice things. She likes to dress well. You know, so I knew it was a temporary thing. But I feel like, you know, maybe some people would be ashamed of those things. And I think that you know, like as a kid, you know, if you're growing up and there's nobody to tell you you know, it'll be all right. You get yourself out of here. It's tough to not feel ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I thank God that I experienced many other things around that time that kept me strong through that, in a sense,
Right.
you know.
I like the fact about the perspective part, right? That, and I was just talking to a friend. A lot of times, I don't people that I talk to that have a tough things are going on and stuff like that. I don't like try to belittle their situation, but like, look, put it like this, right? I don't doubt that you're going through some hard stuff, right? But think about the people that are in another country that are going through war, that they had a house and all of a sudden now they don't have a house anymore.
Mm,
Everything's gone.
mm,
And in fact, some of the family members are dead. You know, I'm not trying to say that you're not going through a hard situation, but
Perspective.
think of the times that you had a hard time and you came out of it, how much better you are. I understand it hurts. I understand it's bad. I understand it's not the best thing. But believe me, whenever you finish with this, you're gonna be better like you were before.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's happened in your life, you know? Hardships build character. Hardships
Facts.
build good people.
Facts.
Where did you get the opportunity to go speak with do a motivational speak? Is that something you're pursuing or is it something that
You know what's
came up?
crazy? My cousin, she is a social worker out of Fort Worth. She works with different schools, and she has set that up. So she had my other cousin, which she is a graduated at UT. She's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, she's actually like raising her kids and focusing on that.
Awesome.
Luckily, her husband does well to be able to take care of them. And so she went there and spoke, and I believe my cousin's husband went, and then she asked me and Andrea to go and speak, you know, and you know what was crazy about it is that she's like, I was like, how many kids am I going to talk to? She's like 30 or something. I was like, all right, cool, do it in the library. I was like, all right, cool. Maybe I can bring like something to use it as a projector. And somebody's like, yeah. And then when I get there, she's like, hey, we moved from the library to the gym. And I was like, oh, all right, it's cool. And I was like, she's going to talk to like a little bit more kids. I was like, all right, how many kids? It's like 120 kids or something. I was like, oh my God. So that's why I told you I was so
Right.
nervous.
Right.
But, you know, what I ended up telling these kids, because this little girl was like, how, you know, I started tattooing when I was 14 years old. So she was like, how did you know that little, that like, that's what you were going to do in your life? And I feel a lot of the times like people, all people, no matter what, sometimes they're like really busy trying to find their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really understand that you're in it, that you're in your purpose in this very moment, you know, that everything is like a part of that journey. And so I told them, you know, it's not that I knew, it's just something that became so consistent in my life. And eventually I figured a way to monetize that.
Mm-hmm.
You understand me?
Gotcha.
But right now, maybe you're passionate about makeup. Maybe you're passionate about like sewing costumes together. It doesn't really matter. Maybe somebody's even making fun of you for it. I said, for some of you, maybe school's your refuge. Maybe you come to school and at school, like, that's your refuge. And you're like, God, my boy's here, my friend's here. Like, your girlfriends are there. And maybe there's a teacher that you really like, God, man, thank God. Maybe because at home things are crazy.
Right.
Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe at school, you come to school and this is hell. And maybe at home, you know, so when I read them that I was living by myself, you know, like it was just me and my mom, you know, I told them that like, you know, maybe no one believes in you, you know, because that's how I felt as a little kid. I was like, you know, but it didn't matter to me, you know what I'm saying? Because if I didn't believe it, then who was, you know? So I was like, you know, there was times that as a little kid, I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, I just felt that like something important was bound to come into my life. So I needed to be ready,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and because a lot of the times, like, people are like, oh, I just don't know what I want to do. I want to, pursue real estate, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And so they start something and they quit it, and they start something and they quit it. And a lot of the times I notice that in life, like, for example, prior to me starting my tattoo journey, I worked at all kinds of places. I worked at Finish Line, AutoZone. I worked at the post office.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every single job I was at, I met someone that introduced me to an opportunity. And that's truly when it goes to saying, like, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. You know what I'm saying? Because it's really like this one person met you, so they heard about something, and they remember that you could do it, so they hit you up about it. And man, I got this job, So that's what I mean by, like, you're already living in your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
So it was really, really great to talk to these kids, man, and be able to try to motivate them. And at the end of it, my cousin and a teacher came up to me, and she was like, regardless of anything, like, you changed a kid's life today.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, like, I was wearing my shirt. This is my logo.
Mm-hmm.
So I had it on my shirt. A girl had it on the shirt. And this little girl came up and she's like, hey, can you draw your logo on my hand? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I drew it. And bro, like 50 kids out of those 100 and something lined up to come and talk to me and get me into me, and like just drawing my logo and signing my logo on all of them. You know what I'm saying? And
that's crazy.
So it was cool, because I wish, I kept it very real with them. I kept it very real as far as like how I got to this point. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like kids these days, they're in the era of like they know everything. They can get on Google and like
not only
fact check
that, but they get the pretty nice Instagram picture post whenever you already made it, and the story behind it, the years and years of struggles of getting to there took a minute.
Facts.
Some people say overnight, but man, it was the longest night.
It was the longest night. You ain't lying about that for sure.
Yeah, that's
man.
Pretty cool, man. I like the preparation part, that you knew that something great was going to come out, and you always prepare, because people say opportunity meets preparation meets opportunity whenever it's ready at the right time. So that's great. Okay, so you were talking about earlier about the tattoo. You and your boys created the first gun, and you started tattooing at 14. How did that happen?
What's crazy? I think that, like, being in the hood and being an artsy kid, like, we were already doing graffiti, so like tattooing was kind of like the next thing to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually I moved to Texas, and I started meeting people. I met my boy Sergio. So he did graffiti, I did graffiti, and we ended up getting real cool.
Mm-hmm.
So one day he's like, second period, and he's like, hey, what's up, bro? What's up? He's like, you want to get a tat? I was like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I got some tattoo ink. I said, all right, fuck. So we skipped second period, and we go to the softball dugouts, because we knew nobody would be there. So we hopped the little fence of the dugout. We get in there, and he picked an M for my last name on my shoulder. Like, we threaded it, we dipped it, and we picked it, And I was like, took like an hour to do a line this long. So then a couple of days after that, we made that tattoo machine at my apartment, my mom's apartment, as a matter of fact. And once we made that machine, it was kind of off to the races. We didn't know anything. So I heard of a dude up the street that tattooed. So I went over there. I was like, I'm going to peep what this dude is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him to give me a tat. He put my name on me right here. And I showed up, and his girl opens the door. And I was little at that time. So I opened the door. She opens the door. She's like looking down on me. And I'm like, she's like, what do you want? And I was like, is Angel here? And she's like, yeah. So she like gets out of the way, and it's a long hallway. It's like a long hallway, and like older house, you know what I'm saying? Like in the hood, long hallway, and the restroom at the end of that,
Right.
And he's with the restroom open, and there's a mirror in front of him, and he's tattooing himself. And he's like, what's up, man? What you want? And I'm like, man, it's for my name on my shoulder. And he's like, it's $20. He's like, but I need you to go get me a remote control car out of the dollar store, because I got to make a new machine for you. I can't use this one. I said, all right. So I went into that, came back. He fucking stabbed me. Probably one of the worst scars on my body as far as tattoos. So I was like, oh my God, this is what a real tat feels like. Ooh. So then I get back to my side of town. I told my boy, I got to stab you.
That's hilarious. I gotta stab you, bro.
He's like, yeah. He's like, bro, he stuck the whole needle in and then dragged it. He's like, oh, no way. He's like, that's all right. So, bro, once that happened, like I think a week later, I tattooed like the Tupac cross on his back, like the length of his back.
Yeah.
The funny thing about it is I just tattooed him maybe a month ago. Last month I tattooed him. And I asked him, I said, do you have any pictures of us as kids tattooing? And he goes, I have one. Mm-hmm. I said, I need that. I need that because we're little kids, bro. We're like, I remember a picture of seeing one that one of my friends had, and I was like, oh my God, I look so little here. And we were already tattooed, you know? So I think like just being in the hood, being an artsy kid and being curious is what started that journey, you know? So, because by the time that was at 14, so by the time I was 15, like, you know, it was like people were coming to my mom's apartment and I'm tattooing them before she gets to the crib. And she would come into at that time we had moved from that 1-bedroom apartment to the next apartment complex next door. And I had a room. And in that room, I had all kinds of things, bro. Like spray paints. And then so she would come in and she'd be like, if you're going to be painting, you need to do it outside because you're getting it on the carpet. Little did she knew it was actually tattooing that had fallen on the carpet. And one day she actually came in and I was like in the middle of building a tattoo machine. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm making a little portable sewing machine so I can just like draw my tattoo on the shirt. She was like, wow, that's very clever. I was like, yeah, thanks, Mom. Just kept on making it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what are people saying in school? Teachers, anybody noticing they have
tats?
Nah,
we nobody, you know, we live if you were living in the early 2000s, the inner city of Fort Worth, man, there was already kids in middle school with tats.
Mm-hmm.
There was already kids in middle school with tats. Like I remember like, even when I was like maybe like in 10th grade of seeing kids come in from middle school with a bunch of tattoos. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then there were already other guys, like we were tattooing. My boy Chuya was tattooing, and there was this other Filipino kid that was also tattooing. So there was like that was already heavily going on.
Wow.
You know, by the time we kind of got to it, you know. So, but I would say that me and my boy Serge at that time were probably the best.
Okay.
And then I just so happened to maybe never give it up.
So at 14, you continue to tattoo. When is the next first opportunity for you to, is there even an idea for you to go to a shop and start doing it, opening your own business? Or is it more like, we're just going to do it from the house right now because, you know, we're making money?
You know, at the beginning, I really did it because I loved it. Like I said, I had other jobs, bro, and I was doing other things in the street as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't never like a monetary thing. It was more like, you know, what you want to tattoo? Bro, I got it right here. You know, so it was kind of like that for maybe from age 15 to 19. So I think age 19 is when I really started to think like, man, I think maybe I can make a career out of this. Like, because I had a couple of friends that were going to tattoo shops and getting tattoos now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went there and then kind of peeped and I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like, you know, and what gave me the inclination of like, maybe we can make a business out of that is because I used to work at Finish Line and, you know, I'm a little kid from the hood. I get my job at the mall and, you know, I buy shoes maybe every 3, 4, 5 months, maybe once, twice a year. Right. So then I was so impressed by the fact that like we had like 100 pairs of shoes that went that day, 50 pair of shoes or like, so just the amount of volume that was coming on. So like going to that shop, seeing the traffic that was going on was kind of like, it was enticing. I was like, oh, okay, maybe we could do something with this.
Yeah.
So I started tattooing. I was working at Vandergrift Chevrolet in Arlington, selling cars. And I tattooed on the guys that wash. When you sell the car, you drive it around. The guys fill it up, wash it, bring it to the showroom so you can present it to the customer. So one of the guys at the car wash, Mexican kid, started talking Spanish. You know, he goes, "Oh, you got tattoos? I got tattoos." And he was like, "Me haces uno?" And I was like, "Yeah, de uno. Come to my house." So boom, came to my house. I did a praying hands on him, killed it for that time. So then word around the dealership got that I was tattooing. So then all the managers started getting tattooed by me.
Serious?
Yeah, shout out to my boy Mike.
Yeah.
They started to get tattooed by me. So right around that time, I had applied months ago, like maybe the year or two before that, I had applied to work at the post office. So the post office calls me. I was like, oh man, it's a really good job. So I'm going to go work at the post office. Post office, like the big main post office where like all the mail comes to and then it goes to the little ones.
Right.
So I was there. So I'm Meacham and 35 in Fort Worth. So I'm there and like, I'm really good at my job. I'm really good at my job. Like even this lady was like, man, you're really good. You need to take the test. You need to get on the union. And, you know, and so I was like, how long have you been working here? And, you know, nothing against, like, I know this is going to sound kind of harsh or whatever, but it's nothing against, like, you know, people that, like, do that, right? So basically, the conversation went like this. So she was like, you're doing really well. You know, you should take this test and maybe you get in the union. You'll start making real good money. You can get real good overtime and this and that. So then I was like, how long have you been working here? And she was like, oh, I've been working here like almost like 18 years. I was like, how much were you getting paid? And I realized that in those 18 years, she was really only getting paid under like $9 more than I was getting paid. And I was a newbie. And at that time, I was going to work from 1 p.m. to like 1 in the morning, and then having one day off, which was like a random Tuesday that I had to do all my laundry, everything else. So I had no life.
Right.
Mind you, like I was young. So I was stacking all my money, stacking all my bread. And, but I just got to the point, I drew this tattoo at the post office, which says my life in graffiti. And I was like, you know what's my life? I'm going to live it how I want to. And I just felt that I couldn't trade my talent for that paycheck. That I was gonna, I didn't want to be her age, wondering like, man, I used to be really good at drawing. I wonder like how good I could have gotten. You feel me? Like I ended up hurting my foot. Like this 1,100-pound thing rolled over my heel. I ended up going out. I had like a hairline fracture. It was swollen. I missed 2 days, and the post office is very strict as far as attendance. So when I get back, like they were like, I don't know if they were trying to I was 19 years old. So I think like maybe they were just trying to scold me, but me being immature and a young kid, I was like, I don't need you. I'm good. And I like took off my badge and I walked out of that place. I called my friend and I had just gotten a job part-time. Like maybe a couple of weeks before that, I went to a tattoo shop. I'm getting a little bit ahead of the story, but I went to the tattoo shop and ended up applying for this tattoo job. And I had gotten kind of part-time gotten it. So then I called my boss and I was like, hey man, can I come in full-time? And he was like, yeah, man, just come. And I literally quit my job. I went to go work full-time at the shop. And, I was 19 years old. I think I was 20 by the time I went full-time. And, I'm 37 years old now. So that's 17 years of just doing this, every single day.
Was it an apprentice thing or was it he's going to let you work? Because he's seen you can get down.
So what happened was that I was living in these apartments and my neighbors upstairs, we ended up getting cool with them. So one day, this girl that used to go there all the time sees this tattoo that I did on a friend of ours. And she's like, wow, I really like this tattoo. She's like, where'd you get that done at? I was like, he did it downstairs. She was like, what? You tattoo? And I was like, yeah. How long you been tattooing? I was like 14. And she's like, dude, my sister works at a shop and they're kind of looking for somebody. I was like, for real? I was like, let me know. So she links me up with her. Shout out to Bree Boyd. My name is Boon Koon. And I go to meet her and she's like, hey, my boss is not here. But, so she looks at my stuff and she's like, yeah, you're pretty good. So come back maybe like a couple hours later, I finally met my boss at the time, my boy Jeremy Schmidt. And he looks through my book. And he sees this cross that I did with a 14 round liner, which is kind of like a big marker type of. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what'd you do this with? I was like, man, to be completely honest, I had a 14 round liner. Like that's the only thing I had. I didn't have a flat one to do it. And he goes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do it with. And he gave me a job. And that working at that shop was probably the most beneficial thing ever. It was in the north side of Fort Worth of a 28th and Dean, like in the hood. You feel me? Taco truck right in front of us, like party at night. But so but he ran that shop very militant. Mm-hmm. To the point that the way that I set up my station to tattoo is still the same way that he taught me, 17 years ago.
Wow.
And just he ran it a certain way. Like, he was very much like, you're fucking that tattoo up. He'll pull you to the back and be like, you better get your shit together because I'm going to finish
straight
that
to
tattoo.
business. There was no playing around.
So,
even though it was the tattoo shop, people got a weird feeling. He's a professional. He wants to do it the right way.
Facts, awesome. And then one time I was like, oh man, I think this people really like me. And he goes, fuck if they liked you. If you fucked up that tattoo, they're going to get home and nitpick it. Mm-hmm. So I don't care if they don't, because he's like a type of person that I don't care if you don't like me. If you came here to get tattooed, shut up and sit down.
Tattoo. Yeah.
And moving forward, it was a super asset because I thought I went from being at home to being at the shop that was like very established with rules. So I was like, it was like almost like a culture shock of like, oh, I guess this is how it is at a real tattoo shop, So, and then from there, I went to other tattoo shops and realized that it wasn't like that at every tattoo shop. So it was very beneficial to be at that shop.
It's good. I mean, it creates good habits for you to, whenever you get ready to go into your own, have your own style. At least the foundation or the professionalism that people are there to want to get a tattoo. And, when they get home, they nitpick it or not, if they liked you or not.
Correct.
What kind of work did you do?
What kind of work did you do?
Yeah. Okay. So you start traveling at one time or another. Was it during this time at this tattoo shop or was it at another time we started traveling?
Traveling really didn't come. What's crazy is that at that shop that first year, I told myself, like, man, like, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to play the street. We're not going to do shit on the side. We're just going to focus on tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave myself like a year. I was like, if this doesn't work in a year, like, and man, like around month number 6 or 7, I'm running through the money that I got saved. There's times where like I'm 3 days straight at the shop and not a single soul has walked in the door. I'm like being so counting all my little chips, And I remember one time like feeling very discouraged. And there's a QT there now. But before that, it was like a tire shop, like Fast Eddie's tire shop or something like that. And I remember looking over and I was like, man, is this it? Like, is this what I'm gonna be looking at? Like, damn, I just left the post office. I was making good money there. Like, man, should I like not quit this? And I was like, you know what? Like, it ain't even been a year, bro. Just keep on pushing it. So about a year later, I was doing okay. I built my clientele. So, you start tattooing like year 1, year 2, you're kind of honing in your skills. It's not really till like year 3 to year 4 where you're actually making money. Mm-hmm. Luckily for my situation, like, I've always been very talented at art, like since a little boy. So that allowed me to progress a lot faster, and I became obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. So like I would drink, eat, sleep tattooing and drawing. So year 2, I went to go work at a tattoo shop, and at that tattoo shop, I met a guy named Sleep. Shout out to my boy Sleep. He's out of Fort Worth as well. Amazing tattoo artist. He did this, my chest, and he shows up at the shop. I get hired on. He comes in a couple of days later. He does black and gray. I do black and gray. So I'm kind of like, we're measuring up, And I'm like, so what's up, bro? Where you from? He's like, oh, Fort Worth. I'm like, oh, you from Fort Worth? Oh, okay, cool. And so I was like, where'd you come from? Like, what tattoo come from? What? He's like, oh, I just came from Paris. And I was like, Texas? He's like, nah, man, like Paris, France. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, I've just been in London and I've been in Paris for the past like 6 months. And I just, I'm back home. My family's here. My kids are here and stuff. And I was like, what the fuck? So him and I developed a really good friendship, like outside of tattooing. And we start kind of doing a couple of local tattoo shops and a local
conventions.
Local conventions. So we go to Austin, and he was the apprentice of a local tattoo artist out of Dallas, legend. Matter of fact, his name is Boog. I don't know if you know him, but Boog is out of East Dallas. He's probably one of the first like Chicano tattoo artists to really take the flag over in France and all over the world. Like he's been in Japan. He sadly passed away a few years back. So Sleep used to be his apprentice, and that's how he got to go to Europe. Mm-hmm. So at that time, I was moving to San Antonio to open up my first tattoo shop with another tattoo artist that I had met at that shop. So he was like, come to London, man. Come to London. You got to come. Bro, it's good over here. And I was like, dude, I can't leave, bro. I'm opening the shop up. Like, I just can't go. And I remember my girlfriend at the time telling me like, man, don't even worry about it. Like one day your name is going to be called. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just got to keep on your plan, keep on focus. I was like thinking like, I may be losing out on a great opportunity. And I was like, man, you know what? You're right. I'm going to just stay the course. So I go to San Antonio for some time. I try to go to this business venture with this dude. Mm-hmm. That ends up going south because this dude ended up being like the worst business partner ever. Mm. But I ended up staying in San Antonio. I met really good people out there, and I pretty much lived there for about 4 or 5 years. So around 4 or 5 years, I'm coming back to Fort Worth. I'm tattooing in Fort Worth, and I start coming back a lot. And like, I love San Antonio, but the DFW is like it's a bigger market in a sense, you know what I'm saying? So at a point in time, my boy's like, you should just come back, man. You're over here like every other month. And I was like, you know what? I think I am. So then I ended up moving back to Fort Worth. And then my friend Sleep and I, we link up, start tattooing together. And then we're like, maybe we should open up a little spot. I was just you and I, like, we just split the rent. And I'm like, we should totally do that. So we get a little room, bro, a little suite. We get a little bit of suite. He works in the morning, I work at night. Sometimes we're there working together super tight, you know what I'm saying? But we're both super creative. So we both like pushing each other like that. He's probably one of the best artists, like raw artists, period. Like the motherfucker can do anything. Like he can sculpt, he can paint, he can do digital, he can print the shirt, like do anything, Right. Super talented motherfucker. So I was like, hey man, you still got your connection in Europe? And he's like, yeah. I said, we should go. He goes, you got a passport? I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, we should definitely go. I was like, damn, for real? He's like, bro, actually next month, in 2 weeks, there's like 4 conventions we can hit. I was like, get the fuck out. And I'm real, like, I need an email, I need a confirmation, and, I need to know these things. He's like,
I need it on paper.
Bro, come. God, they told me they'll be there. In fact, I need to see it on paper. So he's like, just come. So I'm like, you sure I'm going to be able to tattoo? And he's like, just come, bro. Now, mind you, from the time where I was doubtful, looking at this
Mhm.
tire shop across the street, to the time when me and Sleep linked up and are having this conversation about going to Europe, it's been an 8-year span.
Wow.
Understand me?
8 years.
8-year span. So, and in that span, I traveled like all over the U.S. I made connections in San Francisco, San Antonio, New York City, Florida, like everywhere, you know, Chicago, Baltimore. Like till this day, I have these connections. And so by the time Europe came, like I had already hit all of the U.S. And we literally talked about it. 2 weeks later, we looked at flights, and then 2 weeks later, I was in Paris speaking not a lick of French.
Wow.
You know, and we
Yeah.
get there. We get there. We got to travel to another city. So we've landed in Paris, and from Paris we take a train to a city called Nantes. So Nantes is like a little bit southwest of Paris. And we go to Nantes. We do the convention, and true to his word, I get there, and then he's like, "Bro, my boy's gonna let you tattoo. Chill." And I'm like, "All right." True to his word, I get there, and I meet my boy Jean-Marc. So Jean-Marc is a guy from France. He's organizer of this conventions and other conventions. And he's like, "Do you tattoo?" And I was like, "Yeah, I tattoo." He's like, "Okay, you tattoo. Don't you worry." I was like, "All right, cool."
Straight.
And bro, true to working like a Latino, me and my boy Sleep, he's Colombian. We're the last two tattooing at the show. I'm talking about like everything's coming down. They're getting ready to pack it, and we're like, "How much you got?" Like 15 minutes. I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then like, and my boy comes over and he goes, "Look, Latinos everywhere they go."
Freaking
And
all over in
all over
Europe. They already know.
They already know. And you know what the crazy thing was?
Man.
That at the time, I think I had shorter hair. My boy was bald. And so it was the first time, like, mind you, Latinos and especially the Chicano culture is huge in Europe.
Wow.
Like, huge. Like, I'm telling you, like, there's girls with bandanas wearing Cortez, dudes with, like, you know, puff jackets and stuff. And, like, there was a dude, it's a bald dude. Puff jacket, Pancho Villa mustache, bro. I literally walked up to him and said, "What's up, boy? You from LA?" And he's like, "Oh, désolé, je suis de Paris." He's like, "I'm sorry, I'm from Paris." I was like, "Oh, je parle pas anglais." I was like, "Oh, he don't speak no English." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." My boy told me, like, yeah. Another one with Mi Vida Loca tattooed, like, on his forehead, bro, but they're French.
That's wild.
So it's huge. The culture's huge.
Culture.
So this French dude comes with a camera and he goes, "Excuse me, Latinos, Chicanos?" And we're like, yeah, like, from America? And we're like, yeah, we're from America. And he like went like this, bro. It was like 50 people in front of us taking pictures. Because like,
wow,
we're in a small town in France. They've never seen like a brown person with a bunch of tats, Latinos like us, you know. So, and my boy Sleep, he does a lot of like the Chicano art, you know, the cholas with the, like, you know what I mean, the payasas and stuff like that. He does a lot. He's cold blooded at that. A lot of lettering and stuff like that as well. So you know, at that time I was doing a lot of Day of the Dead art. So I had a lot of Day of the Dead art. So we was heavily representing the culture on table, you know. So it was the first experience. I was like, "Oh, wow, this is crazy." Like, people are, and he had told me, like, people are going to go crazy over you. I was like, "For real?" He's like, "Dude, they never see, all they know is the documentary they saw on TV, you know." So
wow,
that was beautiful, man. That was an awesome time. I made great connections there, and until this day, man, I got solid people out there, man.
That's freaking so amazing, bro. To know that they seen it on TV, they heard it in a documentary, but when they see somebody that's just from over here, be like, wow, a freaking instant celebrity, just like that.
And you know, to be honest, Europeans love everything American. Like, what you hear in the news, they're like, "Oh, bro, if the French hate us," and like, bro, that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I've met people over there that they're like so about the American culture. They know every single pop culture movie that has came out. Like, "Do you know in 1987 Tom Cruise came out of this movie?" I'm like, "No, you're American? How you don't know?" And I'm like, "Bro, I live over there. I don't," you know what I'm saying? Like, and they love the culture, like the Chicano rap, like they love all of it, bro. Like it's insane, but you know, it's love over there. You know,
Awesome.
at least on my side.
Absolutely. We're running a little bit short on time. I know. I appreciate it very much, sharing everything that you have. It's freaking cool as hell to be able to listen to, go into the other side of the world, Europe, be able to tattoo. Know they know our work ethic. They know what we stand for, and they know we're solid.
Facts, bro. We're solid.
Tell me about, before I let you go, your name. How did your name come to be?
Tip. You know what's crazy? I got given that name by I was playing the street as a little boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, selling a little weed and this and that. And the guy that I was getting my stuff from, we would get into these conversations about, like, you know, Aztecs and Mayas and stuff like that. And he would just always be like, "You're on a different tip, boy. these little boys, they don't know where they're going, but you on a different tip. And he started to call me that, and it kind of stuck. And then my boys around me started to call me that, So that's where that kind of came from. You know what I'm saying? You're just on a different tip,
That's
So
freaking dope.
Okay.
And also another question. So eventually you became your own tattoo owner.
Correct.
With your spouse.
Correct.
So now you have a tattoo shop that, you right now maybe transitioning, but it's great. How does it feel to have your own spot that you'll be able to, just make it your own, make it the way you want it to be, of course, with somebody that you love and get it to work? How does that feel?
It's great, man. I'm raising my kids to be entrepreneurs. Like, I'm not raising them to, like, if they get opportunities to go to college and they want to pursue that, obviously, like, I'm going to be supportive. But whatever, you want to be a dentist, we're going to own it. You want to be a hairstylist, we're going to own it. Whatever it is, we're going to own it. So I think that today we live in a day and age where like entrepreneurship is very, very high. But I feel proud that I've gotten to this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, to be completely honest, because when you're Latino, when you come from the places that we come from, we're really a statistic. So to get to the point that I'm in front of you, talking to you and telling you my story, like, right. it's huge, And I highly recommend anybody, if you're thinking about starting your own business, if you're thinking about doing your own thing, I highly recommend you that you do it, because sometimes it's not the monetary compensation that actually like brings fulfillment to you. It's the fact that I can say, you know what, I'm going to take these 4 days and hang out with my kids today, or I don't miss like a recital, or she has a little performance, like I can like. Me and my father, after our move, we had a little strange relationship for a while. And, maybe by the time I became a father, we kind of started to like kind of click back together, So then that day that I had my daughter, we get on the phone and he's like, what are you going to do? You going to call your boss? I was like, Dad, I'm going to call no boss. I am the boss. They call me. And that was a really proud moment. And I know for him too, because he's a tough dude, He has a saying like, "Oh, you're having a bad day? Would you cook up concrete because it's Tuesday and the bills are due?" That's the type of dude he is, And so I highly recommend you, man, because there's nothing like finding out what you're truly made out of. And I think that being an entrepreneur, having your own business, obviously every experience is different for everybody. You know what I'm saying? But with a lot of ganas, bro, todos salimos adelante. Everybody.
When you were talking
wins.
to that lady at the post office, and you were seeing and realizing that her life pretty much was given to the post office, and really no much advancement was given, and then to the point where you got hurt, and they were really, even though you were really good, that wasn't enough to kind of sort of keep you around or like let you be. Was that kind of sort of set off the fact that you needed to be your own boss, needed to be an entrepreneur and make your own money, or was there something else that happened that made you want to do that? Where did the entrepreneur spirit come from you?
I think that tattooing very early as a kid for money, being broke, and having to sell little this, little that as a kid, and like keep it honest, me and my boys sold little weed, did this and that, da. So doing that at such an early age, at 14, 15 years old, there's a checks and balances that happens when you're in that world at an early age, and it's like that entrepreneurial spirit that grew out of necessity. You know what I'm saying? I think that the entrepreneurial spirit was already in me, but to pinpoint it for you, when I was a little boy, my mom, she had a boss. I understood the concept of a boss, and I wanted my mom to do something, and she's like, I can't, baby. I gotta ask my boss if I can do that. And so my uncle, which is her brother, her older brother, he's been an entrepreneur his whole life. I didn't know that as a little boy, but I just remember that anytime he showed up, it was good time at my grandma's house. Like he brought meat to eat. There was fireworks. You know what I'm saying? We're going to the beach, or he's got a membership at the country club, so we can go swim over there. And I asked my mom, like, yo, what does she do? Like, who's his boss? And she told me he doesn't have no boss. Like, he owns his own company. I said, what? And maybe this is like around 4, 5, 6 years old.
That stuck with you.
So I spoke to his son about it, because most of my cousins now, I'm the little one, and they're very proud of me, especially because, I was alone a lot of the time. So like, what I went through and what, we all go through our things, but, you could say I had some things were rougher for me. So I had that conversation with him, and I was like, yeah, to be completely honest, because your dad, because your dad was like, I didn't have my dad for the beginning of my life when I lived with my mother, So he was so influential in my life, and he was such a go-getter that I think that as a little boy was really the seed that was planted inside me to go forward. And by the time I got to, tattooing, playing the street really early as a little kid, having my own money at 14, 15 years old, I think that eventually, once I got to seeing that these owners were just really paying for a license and really paying for the light, I can do that, and then that kind of, and actually what happened was that I wanted to buy this shop that I was working at. I saved up some money. I had like $42,000 saved up. She was selling it for 65. I told her I'll give her the 40. I'll give her 45. I had a couple more extra cash. I said, I'll give you 45. I'll give you the rest in payments. And she was like, nah. And so one day at that shop, another girl that worked there looks on Craigslist and she's like, dude, our shop's for sale already. Like the ad's down. Somebody bought it. And so that's when I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to open up my own spot. Like this for what? And also my tax return that year. When I realized she's making 50% out of everything that I was making at that time, And when I got the amount of money, I was like, oh, I did great this year. But then I realized that I said, I made double this. She took half of this. And I said, no, I can't do this. I'm not that guy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you're just somebody else, but I think I'm organized enough to put my ducks in a row and get my own thing going, So literally shortly after that journey got started and,
That's awesome. So, it's amazing, brother.
Appreciate
Before
you.
I let you go, thank you again so much for the time. All your social media, where can they find you at? Any events you got coming up?
You can find me at Mr. Tip Tattoos on IG. Also Mr. Tip Tattoos on Facebook. And you can find me at IncanBeautyStudios.com. And there you can find all of our artists, all of our services, book an appointment, look at our schedules, and look at our work.
Website looking very nice.
Thank you so much.
And you specialize in what particular art or what particular tattooing?
I do black and gray realism for the most part. So if you wanted to get a portrait, if you're wanting to, do anything like that, high realism, anything like that, you can look me up. I'm a beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely a beast. You got to check out the IG. I put all that on the description.
Thank you so much, man.
What is any shout outs that you have? Saludos for anybody?
Shout out to my family for sure. My son Sion, my daughter Zeta, Andrea. Love you guys. My mother. Man, and everybody that's been a part of my journey, man. If you watch this interview and if you see me and if we dealt with time together, know that you were part of that faucet that fed me and that, I drank out of to be here today. So, to everybody, my boy Jeremy Schmidt, my boy David De La O in San Antonio, my brother Jeremy, everybody, man. I'm thankful for everybody.
Awesome. What is an important lesson that you learned doing tattooing or even being an entrepreneur that you would tell your younger self that will help somebody else out? What would that be?
Trust your timing, and that you're not competing against anyone else. And that as long as you're moving forward every single day and giving it your all, trust your timing because it'll come. Sometimes I feel like we're living this day of social media where we're comparing everybody. Man, this guy's got more followers. Man, his work's looking better. But you don't know the work that they put in behind the scenes or who's behind them to get them to that point. So just trust your timing and your process.
Awesome. And usually throughout my day when I wake up, I say a saying, something along those lines to remind myself something like, I'm not immortal. I am mortal and I will die one day. Doesn't have to freak me out or curse me or anything, but just to realize it's a part of life, right? It's going to happen. It's great to realize your mortality, you're not here, but that makes me hurry up and do stuff. With that, I wish you a long, prosperous life. However, when everything's said and done, what do you want people to feel and think about your life?
That I inspired you. That when you were around me, that I inspired you to be a better person. That I inspired you to go out there and chase what you wanted to do. And that I was an example to that person. Because at the end of the day, I don't know anything. I don't know, the world doesn't owe anything to me. The world was here before me, so I owe it. So.
Whenever we got to interview your wife, Andrea, she told me about you a little bit in conversation. Then I saw your stuff, and then it was just, I knew you're good. You're freaking really good, and I just the way talking to you, the way you carry yourself, the phrases you use, freaking amazing.
Thank you.
And then even realizing as a little kid, right? You realize you understood even as small. You came from real humble beginnings, right?
Right.
And that kind of sort of helped you push through even the times where even though you had it really good, to having a little bit more challenge, even sleeping on the floor, to realize that was just temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing, right? And to be able to know you represent even going around the world and kind of sort of getting like what the global Latin factor is, like the things that we're doing over there, the people see it. The people see it.
Facts.
Without a doubt. Mr. Tip, you are a global Latin factor.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, brother.
You.
It's such a pleasure having you here. So thank you guys for having me, and I hope maybe we be back here again one day.
Absolutely. This was another episode of the Global Latin Factor Podcast. Remember to subscribe right now. Thank you very much for being here in another amazing episode. And remember, we are just like you. We are humans. We are the spice in this melting pot that it is the world. Till next time. Thank you very much for checking out this episode of the Global Latin Factor Podcast. Make sure you go and subscribe to the channel. Check out the content and the episodes that we have ready for you. Thank you very much. Till next time.
Pero but in fact is a flamingo coming to Havana and from Puerto Rico.